thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar and discussion with Doug and Dean. My name is Dalen Walton. I'm an SPC and Agile Engagement Manager here at ICON. I would like to extend a hearty thank you to everyone who made the time to join us today. We had hundreds of registrants who submitted hundreds of great questions. Now, we can't get to all of them, but we have done some affinity mapping and have grouped them into themes, and that's what we're going to be pulling from today to ask questions to our expert panelists here. So let me share a little bit about logistics. I'm going to introduce our panelists, then I'm going to tell you a little bit about ICON and what we do, and then we're going to dive right in. We're going to cover as much ground as we can, but if you have a great question, please use the Q&A function, and we'll try to work it in as we go. This session is being recorded, and we will make the recording available to you after we're done today. All right, so let's get started. Our first panelist almost doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Some say his shirts never wrinkle, and that he was the only person to ever ace a Rorschach test. I'm speaking, of course, of Dean Leffingwell, founder of Scaled Agile and creator of SAFE, which coincidentally comes in really handy because that's what we're going to be asking questions about today. He's a very in-demand speaker, so it's wonderful that he made time for us today. Again, thank you, Dean, for being with us.
Hey, you're welcome.
Now,
thanks for having me, Icon. You know, we're always peeps. We go way back.
Absolutely. As for our next panelist, well, some say mosquitoes don't bite him purely out of respect. And at museums, he's allowed to actually touch the art. That would, of course, be the one and only Doug Less, one of ICON's newly minted SPCTs. And if you've ever met him in person, he still has that new SPCT smell. We're very proud of Doug and his accomplishments. And of course, you know, as a side note, his higher bill rate of being an SPCT. So in Doug's case, less is literally more now. See what I did?
Nice. Nice.
All right, so moving on. A little bit about ICON. We've been doing this for 30 years. Yeah, it's hard to believe. We started with Scrum and extreme programming in the 90s, through Lean Six Sigma, the creation of the Agile Manifesto in the 2000s, all the way to partnering with Scaled Agile and SAFE in 2011. Most of our senior consultants were adopting and teaching Agile processes before Agile was even a thing. Now, we teach, certify, and coach 100% of everything in the SAFE world. Every class, every workshop, every specialty. We've worked with over 1,000 companies, almost half of the Fortune 100, and we've trained over 20,000 people in SAFE. We particularly excel at the most advanced topics like lean portfolio management, DevSecOps, executive leadership coaching, even coaching how other coaches coach. Say that 3 times fast. Also, since we were the first partner to sign up with Scaled Agile, that de facto makes us Dean's favorite. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So if you like what you hear today, please follow us on LinkedIn, send a connection request, and we can nerd out about Agile anytime you want. Once again, please use the Q&A function to add your questions as we go along, and we'll try to answer those as we go. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Doug. Take it away.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. And as Dalen had said, we got hundreds of questions submitted, and it was a process of actually narrowing those down into some themes. And you can kind of see I put some numbers in these little subtopics here. That's like about the quantity we got in this. And so as we go through these, we'll put a timer up, we'll discuss them, and then we'll ask you as participants to complete a poll in lean coffee fashion as to whether we stay on that topic or we move on to the next one. And that's how this is going to work. So without further ado, jump right in. Our first question of the day, which over about 30 or more people asked this. It's about as closely guarded as a Marvel script or a Star Wars script, but you know, SAFE 6.0, it's on the cusp. We know that. So Dean, would you like to share with us what's going to be some of the big introductions and changes coming our way?
Okay, so it's as you notice, it's been a while. There will be a SAFE 6.0 and 7 and 8 as long as I'm around. 8 is the version I'm really looking forward to because it's going to come in pill form. So when we get there, you take a pill, the developers will automatically write the test first. Every leader is a Lean Agile leader. everybody automatically limits their whip and it just flows amazingly well with the pill. We're not there yet. So we got a couple more versions to get the pill. So I can't tell you a specific release date for 6.0 because we work with partners throughout the industry and enterprises that are in the middle of rollouts, and they don't want to wake up in class or wake up in the middle of a rollout and say, oh my God, that's entirely different. I wasn't advised of that, et cetera. So consequently, I can't tell you that. What I can do though, because we do a lot of our public our work in kind of in the public sphere, in SPCT channels, in advanced topics, extended guidance, et cetera, is the stuff we're working on. Can't be specific about what gets included and what not, but I want to start with the fact that a lot of the intent behind this next release of SAFE focused on flow. And it focused on flow because I became convinced that the models we were given, the great models we have for Agile team development, Scrum and Kanban, are fantastic, but neither alone really does the job. You can't just simply scale Kanban, and I think Scrum can be awfully lumpy at times. So I've been looking for and watching the teams of the highest performing teams, how they perform, and basically what you tend to see is a blend. So what we're working on is thinking more about the flow of value, and we just recently, to address that, pushed out a fair amount of that content. We pushed out an article called "Making Value Flow Without Interruptions," because this is Lean Thinking 101. We're replacing the House of Lean with Lean Thinking 101. Making value flow without interruptions is basically a description of what flow is, right? When you want to make, so you want to achieve flow, what is it? What's it look like? How do you define it? What are the steps in a flow-based process? Is there a queue? Should you not have a queue since queues are bad? And all those questions. So we've established that and already released that. So if you go to the blog and click back just a few, you'll see some of the first indicators of how we're moving flow into SAFE. Now we're not done with that set. We also then went through and refactored and basically established a scalable model for Kanban teams in SAFE. So you don't have to like hold your head the other way and go, do I attend the system demo or not? And do I have to load a backlog even though we don't use iteration backlogs? No, you don't. So there's a new article right now called Safe Team Kanban, and that's already published, and you're empowered and authorized to use that. Freely revealed, publicly available. So you can right now, if you want, move your team to Kanban and establish a flow-based system using Kanban, or more likely, you can start adding the elements of Kanban, the flow-based elements to Scrum, and start watching a little better for the way the value flows through the system. So the goal of SAFE 6 is to go faster and flow better. And half of that or so has already been released this summer. Back at the summit, we released that. So go to the blog, see the new article on Make Value Flow Without Interruptions, new team Kanban, applying Kanban in SAFE. It shows you how to set up a Kanban system and kind of tune it through any of the levels. And then the new Scrum Master and Scrum articles, which basically reflect the fact that Scrum can flow to and does. It just has slightly different patterns of behavior in terms of the way it manages the work items and activities. So that's a pretty big deal. We're not done. There's more to that, because as we've done the analysis of flow, we've also decided where, we've also kind of taken a hard look at where the issues with flow arise. We call those 8 flow accelerators. They're hinted at in the article, but they'll be very specific about when you establish art flow or team flow, here are the things we're going to look at to accelerate flow. So instead of just saying flow better, meet more often, write better code, we're going to establish a highly specific way to actually debug and improve flow and increase the flow through the system. In conjunction with that, and we've been working towards this for some time, are the new flow metrics. So the flow metrics have been revised just a bit, lifting heavily from Mick Kirsten's work and the Door Metra work. So flow can be measured. So the Measure and Grow article now is starting to call out how it is that you can measure flow. So flow is a really big deal in this release. I think that what you're seeing here is the evolution of SAFE to a flow-based system. It does flow now, but we're going to make it explicit. We're going to call out what it is, and we're going to look for the right kinds of impediments, and we're going to be able to measure it. Measuring is mostly tooling based, and thank goodness for that, because there's a lot of data that moves through our system, and we don't want, admins or Scrum Masters sitting there with Word documents or Excel spreadsheets capturing the data. So we're encouraging you to implement Kanban now, even as a Scrum team, use your ALM tool to start producing the metrics, and the guidance for that is included in SAFE. Another area that you've seen that we're kind of halfway there on is we introduced our first OKR article as an extended guidance. OKRs have become very popular for people aligning strategy with execution, and they're particularly helpful in some areas that we've not yet applied them. One of the areas we didn't apply them is basically when you establish a value stream, what's the why? Well, the why is the OKR for that value stream. So you're going to see a richer and better treatment of OKRs. At the same time, there's an OKR article now. It's in advanced topics. So let me be clear. We develop the work, we vet the work, we circulate the work, we try the practice, we stick it in advanced topic, and then when the next major release of the framework comes up, it moves onto the platen, the big picture, and other things move off. So that's in process. In addition, many enterprises are using SAFE across the business. SAFE is being used in marketing organizations, in sales organizations, and people are asking a different question. I had a VP of a division of 100,000 people, a defense contractor, on the phone the other day, and he said, I'd like to have a common way of working across my division. I have a lean background. Can I use that? Well, the answer is yeah, but you need more than just lean, right? You need to know the core values, the mindset, and the principles. You need a common way of working. So we're seeing pull for even operational value streams being run with SAFE. So we're writing right now and getting ready for publication a couple of articles. One article is basically called Business to Technology, and it identifies 5 distinct patterns we've seen already that industry is using. Patterns like there are actual business arts out there. There's, for example, in response to COVID at CVS Aetna, they put 150, 200 people together. They put the hemodialysis developers, they put the people that did the IT and the HIPAA support, they put the legal stuff, they put the nursing group together in one big fat art, and they just executed the business. So that's a run it, build it, commercialize it business. So we're seeing that pattern. We're also seeing what we're describing as business-enabled arts. These are arts that are just a little smarter than the complicated subsystem arts, the ones that are connected. We're seeing as well exemplary agile leadership teams. A leadership team where some of the questions here are how I get my leadership engaged. Well, you'll be happy to know that some of the time they are. And what we observe in the field is, wow, what are they doing? That's a daily stand-up. Oh, that's their backlog. And they're actually exhibiting extremely agile behavior. So flow, business agility, kind of beyond IT across the business. AI, big data, and cloud, we're pining on that heavily. We've already published those articles. Those will also make it to first-class articles soon. And then another thing we're doing that I think is really fascinating is that SAFE is a system of people, of responsibilities. People execute responsibilities. If those aren't clear, SAFE doesn't work. It matters less what the title is of the person that's doing it, but if somebody isn't, for example, coaching flow, flow won't be coached. So all in the next release of SAFE, and you see some of this now, if you go into the Scrum Master article, you'll see a new what we call a responsibility wheel. And that is an image that says, there's a lot of Scrum Master has to do, but here are the 6 big things. And below that, there's another set of activities you can follow through. So basically reorganizing the responsibility sets, line them up next to each other, solution architect, solution manager, make sure they match. And this has all been codified, and they're all making their way to market as clear representations of the responsibilities of people executing a SAFE model. So those are the major themes. And what I encourage you to do is go to the blog now, because about a half of that has already been fed out through the system. And the work is available to you now. I just left to talk a couple hours ago. I said, if you don't have a Kanban system set up, whether you're running Kanban or Scrum, set it up now. Instrument the thing with your tooling partners, run flow, collect some data, measure flow, because we show how to do that, and then take action. So it's very, very actionable just to do that. We've gone through our second pass of setting up as our own team. We had a better Kanban coach this time around, our own Kanban system, and it has changed the way we work and dramatically improved our productivity. So those are the biggies. You got to kind of stay tuned, watch the calendar, watch the blog, and eventually there'll be a version 6.0 out there. And by the way, we will not write over the top of 5.1. 5.1 will live. We'll support that for another year. So if you're in the middle of a big transformation, have no fear. You can use 5.1. You can read the new articles. You can start adopting like, 6 practices, and we're not going to pull the rug out from under you at that point.
Awesome. Well, that's a lot of themes, a lot to digest there. Obviously, look at the blog. You can start to see based on the blog some of the new articles where it's headed. So just a great segue. Dean mentioned the leadership buy-in. That was the second biggest set of questions that we got. Everything from how do I get my leaders to buy in and engage when I can't even access my leaders, all the way up to how do you get their continued involvement and keep them after it? And how do you gain middle management? Kind of a different question there, about how do you actually get them bought in? And we were just chatting about this before. Dean, do you want to?
Yeah, I think you got to start with the fact that why would they care, right? I think probably as Agilists, we started off in a little corner. Maybe 15 years ago, a few people had a chip on their shoulder about leaders and managers. Maybe that was because we were inflicting really ugly waterfall-based policies and procedures on people that really wanted to get this stuff out. So we didn't necessarily start off in a great place. However, having said that, the business imperative now has reached absolutely C-level, and basically every business is a software business now. So if we want to get their attention first and foremost, it's about the business outcomes. There's no reason to do this other than outcomes, and those outcomes you can see on the SAFE website. You can read any of those case studies. There increases in employee engagement, which is one of the ones I'm most proud of. 20 to 30% increase in employee engagement. Time to market typically goes up by a factor of 4 to 6. Quality goes up at the same time. As we release more frequently, we get more time to practice, and quality goes up, and productivity goes up as well. So if they've got to be interested in the business benefits to care. If they do care, then they have to know that this is their responsibility. We cannot, Icon, our friends here, cannot transform a company that doesn't want to be transformed. It's got to involve the executives. They have a role. They have a role at the portfolio level. They have a role at the art level as business owners, et cetera. And when they see their role and understand that they're part of it, it's a little harder to say, I'm not really interested in that because we don't care about lean portfolio management, or we don't care about releasing software more frequently. So as you reach into the upper ranks, it's about the business benefits, and you're going to have to take that in small bites. So if you don't have a lot of face time with them, then try for an executive workshop. Try for a lunch and learn with Mick Kirson's product to product book. Try for a brief safe introduction using our executive workshop. So you've got to get there, because otherwise we're kind of all wasting our time without strong support. Support's too weak a word. We need their support. We need their active engagement. We're not going to succeed. Middle management's kind of interesting as well. If you look at the larger dynamic of organizational change, the people that are doing the work, let's just say the people doing the development at Agile teams level, don't have much to say typically about the way we work. And that's frustrating. That's why Agile was developed by Agilists on the bench, because they wanted to work differently. The executives, when they do get it, when you get their attention and they say these business benefits are material, yeah, I'd like to reduce my time to market by a factor of 2, and that's normal, right? And say for a factor of 4, they're relatively easier. The question is Deming notes, is that all the workers work in a system, and only management can change the system. So when I'm asked about top down or bottom up rollout of SAFE, I say it's really neither of those. It's middle out. We need the people that are going to change the system to do it. And the trick here, number one, is to have some empathy for the fear of change that they're going to experience. Number 2, they have to find a place in the system. So as we think about our world of hierarchy versus network, they may or may not have a place in the network. They may or not have a place in the hierarchy, but they're going to have a place in one of those two. So their fear is a primal fear. It's a legitimate primal fear. It goes right back to the limbic system. Is this going to affect my job? Am I going to be bad at this, or potentially lose the ability to feed my family? So we have to assuage that fear by saying, no, your role and the way you work will change, but we still need you here. Every talented person that's committed to this company is going to make through this transition, and you start mapping out what you might be. Oh, we have a really big group of project managers. Do we need them? We need people who know how to get things done here, but we don't necessarily need project managers as a way to do it, because when we unsilo ourselves, I don't need somebody just to move a story from silo A to silo B. I do need people who can coach teams. I do need people who can coach arts. So you go through the organization looking at middle management and trying and starting to establish what their role is going to be. Because when they see themselves in it, the world changes. And that's one of the things that actually helped about the big picture, is that you got to look a little bit, but a product manager can see himself. A system architect who early on in Agile, who knows what our attitude was toward that. They see themselves in Agile. A business owner sees themselves in Agile, but they don't know what a business owner is. So help them see their role. Then by all means, get them to Leading Safe. I wrote Leading Safe a decade ago exactly for that. And the only guarantee I give you here is that your success in your enterprise will be directly proportional to the people that actually know what the new way of working is, and will be directly proportional to the leaders, executives, first and second line managers that got through Leading Safe, because that's the epiphany point. When you see the principles at work, it gets really hard to argue with. When you see it as a branded thing that somebody sells, this company does food. Yeah, of course they're trying to sell you something. When you see the principles at work, you'll get it. And when you get it, all of a sudden you'll influence others. And in the Leading Safe class, I always say there's a third of the people there that already want to be Agile. They were Agile before. There's a third that aren't going to change at all. And there's a third that are there to learn. Teach your class to those who are there to learn, and you will reach the tipping point. You'll get that sufficiently powerful coalition for change. To the leaders who have not communicated yet to middle management, they've abrogated their responsibility. There's no significant change in any enterprise that happens without the leaders stepping up and creating a powerful coalition for change. The need for change, the imperative for change, the burning platform, the need to compete. So if middle management isn't there and leadership hasn't quite done their job, and we as the coaches and the SPCs need to reach into middle management, a course at a time, an hour at a time, and coach them and let them know the why we're making this change. It's not just for the heck of it, and what role they will play in the new deal.
Awesome. And we took a little poll. It looks like folks want to move on.
That's only cool. Thing that I see that poll. That's a cool lean coffee thing. Yep. Yeah.
So just to, I love what you were saying there. And I also like to say, kind of drink your own champagne with that group, right? Is form them as an Agile team, form your transformation team with those leaders as an Agile team. Make that executive leader, the PM of that group, right? They're guiding it. Always going back to the what's in it for me, right? Making sure that they want to make some radical change. Continue to remind them, look, this is what we're trying to do, is this radical change. And run them like an Agile team.
Doug, that's exactly one of the patterns that is emerging in the successful transformations, and we'll document that within weeks or months.
Awesome. All right. Next up is kind of touched on a little bit of this too, is safe beyond software. Yes, safe is being implemented by business teams, data teams, right? Just beyond software, marketing teams, sales teams, all. I've seen it. And how do you engage those teams, and how can we leverage those safe in those areas?
So I was a little slow to this party, and the reason is I'm an engineer and I know how to build big systems. I know how to write code. I get science. Now, I've been a CEO all my life, so I'm not stupid about running a sales or a marketing team or how big a legal operation you need, but I don't actually do it. So I hesitated as the market said, can we use safe beyond the IT and tech? Because the answer was I didn't know what the patterns were and they hadn't formed. And I'll be darned if I'm going to say, oh, yeah, I ran a sales team once, so I'm pretty sure you should run your sales team this way. What happened is the market got ahead of us because the market is smart, and it started to develop these patterns. And we published, I think, 5 so far of basically safe implementations that had virtually nothing to do with IT. One was a registration system workflow at a large university. So we created a scratch pad for that. called Safe Beyond IT, and you can find that now. You can go read those. You can do a pull down and read those 5 articles. We do have an offering in Safe for Marketing. That place we're pretty far along. We do not today have offerings planned for the other. What we are about to release and announce is this business and technology pattern library. So that what we're seeing is that if people can see a library, like somebody might say, no, we have 100,000 people. We want to be an agile shop. We want to use Safe. What's that look like? Honestly, I don't know. Who knows? It's never been done before. But with the right building blocks, with that leadership team, maybe a business art, maybe a business enabled art, maybe an agile business function. I would describe marketing as an agile business function. These are the building blocks we'll use to build that true agile enterprise. The pull is there, the data is there. 6 will take us beyond 5. In the meantime, take a look at Safe Beyond IT and see 5 of those examples. And if you need help with that, find a partner for sure. We have about 500 partners in the networks, and there are people that specialize in almost every business domain. We, of course, maybe not of course, maybe shouldn't be that presumptive. We run our business on Safe, which means that we actually also run our operational value streams on Safe. And that's been fascinating. That means that we only have one LPM function. And we have multiple arts, so we split the arts, but we only have one portfolio. Now, the discovery there is kind of interesting. That portfolio gets very, very interested in the operational issues. And if we're not careful, those new innovations, those Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 things may take a back seat. So one of the patterns that we're seeing is operational value streams running in Safe. So again, just give us a few weeks, few months, and we'll start to opine on those patterns. And since they're just patterns, they're not perfect and they're not exhaustive. You're going to have patterns too. So we're going to build a pattern library that you can use to build the agile enterprise to cover the whole 100,000 people that you're employing.
And just to piggyback on some of that too, is those areas also can implement OKRs. And OKRs in those business areas, that helps you understand what it is they're actually aiming for and delivering. And then it's kind of now how do I deconstruct that into a way to actually deliver incrementally and iteratively to build towards those OKRs. I mean, it all dovetails together in my head, at least, in terms of those areas your business operate the same way. They have objectives and they have outcomes and outputs. And then it's just a matter of how do we frame that into a delivery mechanism that is iterative, incremental, and exercising things like cross-functionality.
And there's a few more things we're doing there because we get the problem. This Safe is heavily biased towards IT and software systems. That's because we built it for that. At the same time, as we bring up new teams in, let's just say, multimedia, and we look at the basic quality practices and we think about, does peer reviewing help there? Does peer review help there? Does collective ownership help there? Do T-skills help there? Does start with a test in mind help there? Those basic quality practices and the principles apply throughout business. So we're actually also revising the principles a bit just to make sure that they don't come off as quite so software centric. Right? If I'm about to refactor a legal team at DaVita of 1,000 lawyers, okay, do I need to take an economic view? Absolutely. Do I want to build my solutions in fast incremental learning cycles? Absolutely. Do I want to use cadence and synchronization to coordinate my work? Absolutely. Do I want to decentralize decision-making? Absolutely. So a lot of what we have is scales already. A lot of it can be tuned, and we need to provide support so that if I'm doing that 1,000-person legal department, I've got quality practices, values, mindset, and principles that work for me. Because after that, it's really up to you. What does Agile look like in your world?
So we're out of time. Should we, let's see, can I run this again? Yep. Do our poll. Do we want to move on or continue to talk about safe beyond software?
I think we're moving.
I think we are moving. I can pretty much drag it to the right. And another fun topic. Measuring transformation. What are indicators, metrics, and methods to measure the success of a safe business agility transformation? I mean, you can actually, some of this is available just by, clicking on the measure and grow area of the framework itself. So I think from a tactical boots on the ground, that's how I see this as a coach. I'm going in and I'm leveraging the team and technical agility assessment, the agile product delivery assessment, all the way up to the business agility. And I'm using that. Why? Because so much hasn't been invested already in the whole gaps and grows area that has been developed. And I'm showing Safe Collaborate here. There's Safe Collaborate templates out there for when you see opportunities, there's actually real actions you can take. And we've done a lot to develop that as actual actions that have been proven patterns to help teams mature in certain areas, to help trains mature in certain areas. So, I mean, to me, it's there, but anything else you'd like to expand on, Dean?
Yeah, so SAFE moves slowly at the big picture level. Honestly, it's just disconcerting for people to have that change too quickly. If it was up to me, I would go back 10 years ago where every weekend I updated SAFE. Well, it's not up to me, and the world has changed. However, behind the scenes, behind the big picture, we re-release constantly. And one of the things we've been working on is measure. And we've now reestablished, and this was after 5.1 launch, by the way, we established 3 primary measurement areas. And they are outcomes, business outcomes, which are relatively associated with OKRs, the key results, and KPIs. And we've recently added employee engagement to that, because if the development community is unhappy, you're going to hurt. The competencies, which are the assessments that we have, that you have access to 2 powerful partners online to run the competencies. And now, because we are cognizant of it, we've added flow. So the 3 measures that we associated with basically measuring your business are competency. How's your competency increasing? How are your outcomes changing? And how are you flowing value through the process? One more simple trick is establish OKRs for your safe transformation. So that might be a thing, even back to the leadership question, right? We never really had this before. It's like, okay, I want to go faster, better, cheaper. Yeah, I get that. Every software vendor since 1943 says you're going to go you're going to go better, faster, cheaper with my software. What are the OKRs for you in this transformation? And when you get that middle management or that engagement with upper executives, that's really the telling part. What are you trying to achieve? Do you want to launch into a new market? You would like to, lower the employee turnover. You'd like to get higher productivity. You'd like to, get through this tough economic circumstance with SAFE. Establish via OKR what the transformation is, and then once that's established, it can be measured. And in the meantime, we have those 3 kind of rock star metrics, and 3 is not 300. So 3 things to measure: flow, outcome, and competency.
Yeah, and I know I get asked as a coach, everybody always says when we go in, is when can we, what's our transition away from coaching, right? When do we know that we're really enabled in doing this safe? And that's a great measure is can you do some of this alone? I mean, can you launch arts on your own? Are you seeing, things like regular cadence of delivery, like the separation of release from deployment? Are you starting to see those things in real life? Like the things that we've been coaching on, are we starting to see you take those and run with them, right? And go even beyond and start to do your own, right? Inspect and adapt. And how can we grow from there? Capable of implementing your own new metrics, all these other capabilities that you can have. Are you cross-functional?
And Doug, there's a fundamental premise to change management, which says we need people to behave differently. And I think Cotter and others will point out that whose obligation is it to show them what differently is? It's not theirs. They can't go, I just need to be different. Training matters here. Learning matters. And while I've seen people go, oh, those are vanity metrics, how many people are trained in SAFE? Well, I tell you what, try to do a SAFE implementation. I've seen it where nobody is trained in SAFE, okay? It may be a vanity metric or it may be a leading indicator, but if people are getting through the classes, if they're attending the classes, if classes are getting good feedback, you are making progress. So that's a leading indicator. It's a vanity metric, but people do need to know how to behave.
I start to see things like, transformation. Do you have thriving? One of my key measures is, do you have thriving communities of practice? Right? Thriving communities of practice that are, people teaching each other. That's, to me, when you're starting to hit full stride when you can see that.
Hey, Doug, as a vignette, I'm sitting here looking at a sticky for the security training that I have to have done by the end of this month, because we, like everybody else, are on a SOX 2 kind of compliant push for security. They expect me to behave differently. They expect me to do things differently. There are things I can and can't do that I used to be able to do. There are things they expect me to remember a spear phishing attack. Okay, that's an expectation for me as an executive of this company. I have to be trained to understand that. So when we go through these transformations, I think we often go, let's have a safety security protocol. Okay, everybody's got to be trained. And this is not a pull training. I didn't wake up and say, I really wish I had this. I need to do this security training right now. This is a push training that says they want me to behave differently. They're obligated to give me the opportunity to do that. I'm responsible for doing the actual work. So let's not minimize how important it is to show people how we want them to behave if we want them to behave differently.
Lead by example. Oh, another fun topic. As we go beyond essential safe, right? One of the things that people want to dive into the deep end of the pool with is lean portfolio management.
Yeah.
And so strategies to implement LPM and move away from our traditional annual budgeting cycles, ROI, earned value, etc.
So the questions kind of imply that we're not getting it done and we need strategies. Let me spin the question a little bit differently and then come back to it. A couple of things. LPM used to be something that grew when people really understand that they had more than one art. They needed to fund the arts. The product managers needed some help. We needed to figure out what our value streams were, and the value streams all kind of live at LPM level. And it used to be even laid on the roadmap. It's like, don't worry about that yet. That has really changed. I'm only going to guess because I don't have real data. But this is a fact. A significant number of our larger transformations are starting there now. And that never used to be the case. This is actually our fastest growing course. Now it's growing on a relatively smaller base, and there's not as many practitioners that might attend, for example, that might attend Leading Safe. But we're getting incredibly take up on this. There's no other obvious offering to solve the problem. And if you're able to express to these executives the value of that visibility, the value of kind of collective views of the work, the value of participatory budgeting, and now not everybody wants to do participatory budgeting, but what is the corollary? Non-participatory budgeting? Well, that doesn't sound very lean and agile either. So in the implementation now, we're starting to see that go faster, sometimes first and early on, and other times it takes to get there a little later. So I haven't seen, the implication of this question is that we can't get LPM started. That's maybe true for a bit, but I think in general, that's a problem that tends to self-resolve over time, because as safe implementation gets more successful, as they start to want to get more initiatives through the system, they have to bring LPM to bear. I'd be interested in chat if anybody else has any, or Doug, if you have experiences on where there was an easy uptake of LPM.
For me, the places that have done it pretty well, look for a portfolio. It's kind of like a show me the money thing, is a portfolio that isn't too big and isn't too small, that I can actually sink my teeth into on this and use the example to move forward. Because if it's a massive portfolio, it's going to be really hard. But if I have a portfolio that I can actually wrap my head around, and I have a safe fellow on my shoulder here in my ear saying, remember, LPM isn't a process and tooling and ceremonies game. It's a people game, right? It's all about people. And so having the people, when I can find a group of people that are making investment decisions or influencing the investment decisions for a reasonable portfolio, that's where I want to start. I found the most success there is finding that group of people that can make those investment decisions, and start with them. And then start by getting them to look at their backlog, if you will, in that portfolio canvas, that portfolio Kanban, sorry. Get that going, right? At least start there. Put where things are currently in flight, and then you can start having the discussions about LPM events and making those changes and looking at investment horizons. But again, start small with a group that, has a portfolio that they can get their hands around, right? And a reasonable number of people.
Hey, Doug, there's a couple questions in the Q&A that I'm seeing here. I'm going to be flippant for a bit because I'm kind of a flippant guy. Is there an ETA for Safe 6.0? Do you have a time horizon for Safe 6.0? The answer is yes. Next question.
Next question in the questions and answers.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was a joke that didn't go over well at all.
Yeah. It's TBD, right? To be determined when it's going to come out. It's coming, but
yeah, I'm seeing the emoticons there. Sorry about that.
There's a good question at the end regarding the tails onto what we're talking about. We're trying to move from essential to portfolio. We're on the backside of a very large acquisition. How can we best convince the new parent company in finance that this is a natural maturity progression and all the more important as we're bigger? I think that's a good question. A lot of M&A going on in the world.
Well, I think the storyline would go as follows. With these acquisitions, we're going to have even crisper decisions about the way we spend our new aggregate money. And there's going to be multiple stakeholders at play there. And there's going to be multiple points of view. We could do that with the annual beauty pageant of who has the best slides and got the most support from multimedia for their slides, and therefore that's the best thing to do versus somebody that just had solid answers and slides. Or we can go ahead and fire up lean portfolio management, put in a process where we can see them all first, estimate them all first, convert those estimates to dollars, look at the dollars available, and make decisions together. So I would suggest it as a way to handle that merger, because otherwise you're going to have stakeholders with a single aggregate budget debating what's important, and it's going to basically be the hippo rule, who's the loudest. So if you surface that work, I mean, the reason there's a portfolio Kanban there is you need to know what that work is. Somebody in the acquisition said, well, this is my time to do my project that never ever got done before in my old company, but the new one I can get it done because I got a bunch of developers now, I'm going to go right to it. You can't have that. We have to surface these epics. That's what we have the word, a nice big word for that, through the portfolio and see them all. Visualizing the work is a huge first step towards managing the work, managing work and process limits, and aligning on the work. You have to recognize that that alignment is not a natural state. The natural state is entropy. Second law of thermodynamics. To get alignment, you have to work at it, and you have to know the why of alignment and the how of alignment, and the LPM will do that for you. So I would coach that merger, say, let's get alignment on our spend and our initiatives. Let's do that consciously. Let's do it in full view of at least the people making those decisions, and let's fire up LPM to do that.
All right. Let's run a poll. Should we run our poll? Should we continue to talk LPM or move on?
I'm going to disappoint Dawn here. She's teaching CapEx and OpEx and TBM portions. Are those being expanded? They're not. What we have opined on is the tip revision of our understanding of how to handle CapEx and OpEx within the enterprise that does capitalize expenses. The TBM consortium is a standards body. It's moving very slowly, and right now I don't know that there's anything new that would help you do a further work than what's defined in those advanced topic articles. And I do believe it's very important. So I think you can find somebody that's done that, but we're not right now publishing more guidance.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. Another really fun question that is also, as we have done so many transformations, what are the most valuable elements of implementing SAFe that you often see overlooked, omitted, or just completely improperly customized, or in some cases even bastardized? Right? So, yeah.
So people say, can you customize SAFe? Of course. Here's what I've noticed. I've seen maybe very few customizations that are better than what SAFe called out. What I mostly see is we didn't really have an RTE, so the VP of development fills that role, and that's our adaptation. What I mostly see is, well, we can't be bringing on product owners here, so we've got a good tech guy here, and he'll be the PO for 4 or 5 teams. So most of the adaptations go south and don't actually improve things. The starting point that led me here wasn't a daily stand-up or people could get together, or I could get 200 people doing Agile. The starting point that got me here was extreme programming. And extreme programming cared about the basics, the basic blocking, the block and tackle, write the test, write the code, automate the test, build test automation, make sure that your test automation investment was as high as the test. The companies got really, really good at quality, took extreme practices to the development of the code. Scrum was more freeform than that. Scrum was about the process. XP was about the code. Well, Scrum won the wars, and consequently, a daily stand-up and those things became important. But the role of the coder, test-driven development, behavior-driven development, that kind of took a second seat. So one of my largest fears is we try to go really fast and scale crappy software. So I think you've got to reinvigorate. In fact, I used to see a 1-2 punch. I don't see it anymore. It would be, we would go in and do safe, and then we would go in and bring in XP consultants, and we'd update a little bit of the safe XP stuff, tighten it, and bring the consultants in. So not addressing the basic fundamental tenets of software agility in terms of the code crafting, I think, is a huge anti-pattern, and it's a huge scare. Second anti-pattern is large enterprises are giving the nod to safe, right? There's a lot of momentum. We have a big footprint in the market. We have a lot of key results in a lot of companies, but those will not necessarily be your results. The second anti-pattern is we renamed our people to safe things, and we put them at agile teams, but they don't really work together. They're not really agile. We couldn't afford any coaches. So they're really a bunch of I-skill teams in the same room who aren't really aligned as a team, not coached as a team. They don't have a common purpose, but that's an agile team. And our VP, the VP is he's the RTE because he really knows how to get stuff done. So the VP from the hierarchy side is also filling that role. So not really being agile and not going with the principles is a huge pattern. And I think that most of the ones that struggle from that, because even when they adapt safe a little bit, it's generally not so far off. When they just pretend, right? Oh, we use safe. What does that mean? Well, we call our project managers POs and Scrum Masters. Oh, okay. Do you integrate frequently? No, it's really, really hard to integrate. Do you do the system demo? It's so hard to get that together. Nobody wanted to. We did one and it didn't work very well. We didn't do it again. How about inspect and adapt? You did that? No, last time the executives didn't attend. That's not safe, right? That's not even essential safe. That's just pretend.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Walked into a very large financial company who said they were doing safe, and I said, do you do PI planning? Well, yeah, but it's a half a day. I'm like, okay, a half a day, and we only invite the POs,
exactly,
the POs and the PMs, right, to our PI planning. Right? I'm like, you're not doing PI planning. And I think for me, if I look at what is the most valuable thing that I think is overlooked, it's on the implementation roadmap, and it's that organizing around value. I'm so glad it was added as a principle, because when I see that skipped, and there's a question that someone asked even later, when I see that skipped and people try to lay safe over top of the hierarchy and not the network, right, it just doesn't work. Right? When they try to just put it over top of existing silos, or try to take, everybody rolls up under this one person, so we're going to take his organization and slap safe on it. But that organization just needs other parts of the enterprise to deliver value. So you're not organized around that value. And I think that is just a fundamental failing when people don't take that seriously and try to find the mix of people that are needed to deliver end to end and put them in a room together, just like you would a tiger team solving a production issue, and create arts that can deliver end to end. I see that as a major issue. So, and I can expand from there. I mean, some other things like whip, excessive whip. I see teams all the time that want to improve and they want to improve. And there's the desire of the people to want to improve. But when they have leadership, management, middle management, product organizations pushing on them for more and more and more velocity and putting backlogs out there that way exceed the team's capacity to deliver, those teams become apathetic. There's no time and space for innovation. They can't improve because they're just being thrust with just more work than they can deliver. And they don't, and they just become buried in that. And they don't look at, okay, how can we actually improve the system? So that's another thing that I see as I walk into multiple enterprises. So
Essential Safe has 10 critical success factors. You got to do the 10.
Yep.
Click on Essential Safe, find the 10. If you're not doing those, you're probably not going to be very successful.
All right. I think we got time for one more. Can we squeeze one in? And this kind of touched on a little bit of this. Maybe we can, address this fairly quickly. But this goes back to the other things. How do we organize around value if you didn't do that before launching the art? How do you make changes?
This is going to seem flippant. You have to reorganize, right? So if you read the Organizing Around Value principle right now, there's a section called Reorganizing Around Value, and no art design is perfect. No team is perfect. No team topology is perfect. This is like this is the best art we can do, given that it's also doing this other thing, given that 3 people are here, and given that this guy has eye skills, and given that we haven't found RTE yet. Okay, that's more typical art. So don't worry so much about, okay, if you didn't get started right, fix it. We have mature companies that look at that quarterly. And they say, okay, are these the right arts? One of the big telecom companies in Asia, probably the biggest, is using organizational design to establish value streams for all the things they haven't been able to perform in the market up till date. So they add those and they reorganize as necessary. This is the network side. Nobody gets a new boss when you move from team 1 to team 2, generally. Right. Developers can move teams can move to arts. It's all fluid and dynamic and available for immediate reorganization. If you freeze them, you're going to freeze them in new silos. They're going to locally optimize. They're going to be reluctant to take on different types of work. It's okay that this is dynamic. It's okay that there's a bit of discomfort in these models because the models aren't perfect. The models can never exactly reflect your organizational skills and the value you're trying to produce. So it's okay. It's the 80-20 rule. This art's kind of working. This is too. What if we move 10 people from this art to this art? Nobody needs to worry about it from an HR standpoint. We have the ability to do that now. And what you do see in high-performing enterprises is you see that naturally. You see this shuffling. You see the arts grow and wane, and you see the team complements changes. You don't always see the traditional Scrum long life team. They exist, but it's more likely that a couple of team members have changed. Some people are on a different art. We wanted to get a different skill set or whatever. So it's okay to have some dynamic behaviors inside these organizational models.
And I've actually witnessed a kind of a neat thing that happened on one particular art that wasn't organized around value is they started to see, hey, we need these people over here. And so they consumed them, right? They pulled them in. So instead of actually stopping and doing the big reorganization, when they saw, oh, we have this service over here, and it would be so much beneficial if those people were on our art, they had the freedom and they just consumed them, right? Like a game of Pac-Man, eating the dots, right? I need these dots in order to win the game. And they would just consume until they grew to a point that now I'm gonna have to split into multiple arts. Right? But that's what they would do is instead of trying to reorganize, they'd say, we need these people in our value stream. And so, kind of like the zombie apocalypse, they would just go eat more brains and bring them in. So
I have a special note for Dawn, who is dead serious about her question, and I'm dead serious about the answer. I don't know if this will work for you, but the company that I saw present at the TBM conference that had totally nailed this, that was about this size, was MasterCard. And the woman that was ahead of that was VP of IT finance, and her name was Mary Gross. I have no idea if she's on LinkedIn or anything, but MasterCard is a case study in doing that right. They eliminated timesheets entirely, and they eliminated projects, and they got through it just fine. So you're going to have to find some experts and find some people that have done it.
We've got just a few more minutes. The last little thing on here, Dean, is I don't know if, I know you've worked a lot with Dr. McKirsten, moving from project to product. Any tips or tricks as to how to get people out of that old project mindset into thinking like a
Yeah, here's the thing. That's such a brilliantly worded book, right? There's more in the title even than in the content of moving from project to product. It's also an easy read. It's also like the coolest book around right now from IT Revolution Press. It's got Gene Kim support, etc. Do that as a lunch and learn and just set. So recently at the DevOps conference, which is always an interesting crew, as you know, lots of very heavy DevOps proponents as the only method you need. The words around project to product have become ubiquitous, and they start talking about aligning around value streams, and a value stream has an OKR in front of it. It has a product manager who's responsible for it. And all of a sudden the word product owner from Scrum, which was kind of a stupid word a few years ago, is now all just the total game. So the book alone, I think, will do it. I think that the book does not tell you how to do it. It doesn't say, here's the way you've been funding projects. Probably SAFE tells you more about how to do that, because we are projects. Our solutions are at the end of it. And for example, lean budgeting paradigms are there. I'd lunch and learn the book. I'd call Mick if you're a big enterprise, or get him on stage and he'll talk to you about it. But it's a brilliant idea, and the idea is super catching, and the label is just it's amazing what that label is doing to the industry in a book that definitely supports it, but you wish you had more.
I always think like anything, I think of myself. I've always said I'm a recovering project manager, and I wanted to learn more about product management. So what did I do? I educated myself. I wanted to understand what it means to go from market research, the stages through customer analysis, product development, and understand that. I mean, I think you have to educate yourself first and foremost, and then start to embrace things like customer centricity, design thinking, hypothesis-driven development, right, and getting into those things. But fundamentally, it starts with educating yourself. And that's,
And we are at time. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody throwing in questions. It was a great conversation, a great back and forth. Obviously, we could do this for another 8 hours straight. There's plenty of room to cover. Stay tuned for updates on 6.0 soon, TBD. It's ready when it's ready. We'll just tell you that.
Just watch the blog and know I'm getting old, so this has to happen.
Until we get that pill, right?
Until the pill is available, we got right. One release at a time.
Awesome.
And we will be sending the recording out to everybody that registered. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you for the next one. Bye.
Thanks.